Beyblade X news just does not stop. I've talked about the bays, I've talked about the new app, but now let's talk about the anime and the manga. We're gonna go over the new characters and what bays they're using, when the manga drops, and also when the anime releases, which is sooner than you probably think. So let's dive into it. Starting with the characters, let's talk about Bird Kazami, or Kazami Bird. I'm gonna call him Kazami because I think that's a bit of a cooler name, but he is who is supposed to be, or at least seems to be, the main character for Beyblade X, although I'm kinda not so sure, and I'll talk about why later. He's featured most prominently in the prologue, and he uses a bird Beyblade. I think it's called Strike Eagle. He eventually uses Hell's Scythe, though. We see him holding Hell's Scythe in the little manga preview poster thing. He looks pretty cool, although pretty basic. I mean, he has the most normal clothing out of all the characters we've seen so far, along with the trademark spiky hair that we come to expect with all Beyblade main characters. Pre-orders for Beyblade X are now available at Mall of Toys. They have all the products in the initial lineup ready for pre-order, including some bundles. I'm sure these bays are gonna go pretty quickly, so if you're interested, definitely go check them out. Links in the description down below. And if you've already reserved them, you should be getting an email pretty soon about completing your order. The beginning of a generation is always crazy, so get in now before you lose your chance. Next up, we have the attack user, and honestly, the character I'm most excited to learn more about, and that is Common X. This character is pretty interesting to me because in all of the official reveals Takara Tomy has done, he is seen wearing this X mask. Baytuber Nizuma Blader, I think, put it pretty perfectly when he said it's like a mix between Kamen Rider and Rider X from Speed Racer. He also seems to be the user of BX01 Dran's sword, which is also pretty significant. For every generation of Beyblade so far, the very first release ties to the most main character of the show, and Beyblade X would be breaking that tradition. Dran's sword is also the bay that we see the absolute most in the marketing for Beyblade X. It's the one that's shown most in the magazines, the trailers. It's just the most talked about one, so you'd assume that would be for the main character. So why is the main character using a different bay? We've also seen what this character looks like underneath the mask as well, and this may be a spoiler. If you want it to be like revealed whenever the manga comes out, or even when the anime comes out, then I would skip to this time down below. I don't know if it's a spoiler, but just in case, you've been warned. And this is what he looks like. He kind of looks pretty cool. He has blonde hair with like a blue streak, which is kind of cool, I guess. We also may have seen him in the background of the manga prologue as well, potentially. So what this means, I just don't know. There's a lot of questions with this guy. Now let's move on to another character that's really interesting, and it is Nanairo Multi. There's a few reasons why this character is pretty cool. First off, it is a female blader, which may not seem that interesting, but considering Burst had like no female representation besides Ilya Mao, who didn't even get a release for Takara Tomy for some reason, it is pretty significant. And it also seems like she is going to have two bays, not just one. That kind of seems like where the multi comes from, and it looks like she'll have two different personas or personalities. One of them is like a pop star kind of thing, and the other looks kind of more like a count of some sort. She has like a hat and a cape, and one uses the stamina type Wizard Arrow, and the other uses Knight Shield. We have some other characters as well that are only shown in like brief snippets of a prologue or in little inverted panels on the trailer. We don't know what bays they use or what their names are. One of them is pretty cool. I assume he's like maybe a bad guy or a mid-season villain. He has a little like dragon like swirl in his hair, and we thought he used Dran's sword. But apparently he doesn't, or maybe he uses another Dran sword. Maybe he uses the rare bay Cobalt Drake, potentially. I do assume he's a pretty important character to the show, and he's important to the X Tower as well. Speaking of the X Tower, let's talk about the manga. The manga is going to get a 70-page introductory chapter on June 15th, released in CoroCoro, which is huge. I'm sure we're going to learn way more about all of these main characters, and I do hope we learn a lot about Common X, because that's just such a big mystery I'm interested in. I also want to learn more about this X Tower, which is apparently the hotspot for Beyblade pros. It's like the Beyblade scene, and we knew about that from the manga preview that came out just a few days ago. I also wonder if we're going to see any new bays as well. June 15th is 1 month exactly from the release of all of these bays. We do see one new bay potentially teased. It looks like a defense type, and I can't really make out what the motif is in the middle, but there's one bay at least. So finally, let's talk about the anime. Before Beyblade X was even in the news, and even when news started slowly coming out, most people assumed that whatever the first bay releases are would probably just be a manga exclusive. The way it worked for Beyblade Burst is we had about 6 to 8 months of those initial releases that were super basic, just introducing the idea in the manga, and then whenever the anime came out, they used the next lineup. They did that for Metal Fight, and they even did that for the Plastic generation, so we assumed Beyblade X would follow that same template, but it's not. Vsauce, Michael here. What if the Beyblade X anime came out this year? It is confirmed the anime is dropping this fall. We don't know what day or month yet, but if you go by other anime releases, that means from around early September to even early January. This is pretty interesting considering the manga is going to release maybe 4 or 5 chapters by the time the anime premieres, which is pretty unusual. This probably means they started on the manga pretty early and they have had it ready in advance for a little while, and maybe it'll mean that we're getting bigger chapters overall. Bigger chapters means more story, and I'm okay with that. The Beyblade manga is always really good, and it's a lot shorter than the Beyblade anime. You can't really stuff a lot of filler or training arcs in the manga because it has such a low page count, but if they expand the pages, that either means A, more filler, or just a bigger story. In summary, I really like the characters and their design so far. I think Bird is probably the least interesting one as of right now. He just kind of seems more standard than the other two, Common X being my favorite. I also wonder if maybe they're not doing a primary single main character this time, and instead we have 3, because they all seem of equal importance, with Common X being just the main one. He's shown in the middle, he's using BX01, so I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, and I appreciate the support you guys have given me through this whole Beyblade X news cycle. It's been pretty crazy. I've uploaded more videos in the last week and a half than I have in months, and it feels pretty good. Hopefully the rest of May and all of June has more information, because the wait until July 15th is gonna be crazy. I'll see you guys in the next one. Have fun, bay away.